After 10 hours of driving in the snow with my arthritis to celebrate Christmas with my daughter, I came to the door and heard, "I hope he doesn't make it." They laughed, mocking my sacrifices. Instead of a warm welcome, it was a heartbreaking betrayal. I quietly closed the door and left, and then a real storm began. What happened next changed their lives forever. They will never forget it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. My fingers, stiff from arthritis and cold, fumbled with the doorknob. 10 hours of driving through Michigan snow, white-knuckling the steering wheel while my joints screamed with every mile. The gift bags in my back seat had shifted during the treacherous drive, wrapping paper crinkling like broken promises. Ashley's house glowed warm against the December darkness. Christmas lights draped the porch railings, twinkling red and gold, exactly like the ones I'd helped her hang 3 years ago when Howard's back was acting up again. The same excuse he used for everything. I raised my hand to knock, then stopped. Voices drifted through the thin door, Ashley's laugh mixing with Howard's deeper rumble. My heart lightened. They were home, safe, probably wondering where their old man was. I'd driven through a blizzard to be here. Arthritis be damned. Nothing would keep me from Christmas with my daughter. I honestly hope he doesn't make it. Ashley's voice cut through my thoughts like ice. My hand froze on the doorknob. "Come on, that's your dad," Howard replied, but his tone held amusement, not reproach. I know. But look at this weather. Maybe the roads will be too bad. We could have one Christmas without him hovering, asking if we need money, bringing those awful sugar cookies." Ashley's laugh again, lighter now, just us. No guilt trips about family togetherness. "The old man does lay it on thick," Howard agreed, always talking about his sacrifices, how he sold his business for you, like we asked him to. Right? I never asked him to be my personal ATM. That was his choice. The cold seeped through my coat, settling deep in my chest. I'd been standing there maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like hours. The Christmas music playing inside, silver bells, suddenly sounded mocking. "Besides," Ashley continued, "he's getting older. These long drives aren't safe for him anymore. We're actually being responsible by hoping he stays home." "Very thoughtful of you," Howard said, and they both laughed. I stepped backward, my boots crunching in the snow. The sound seemed deafeningly loud, but the music and their conversation continued uninterrupted. My car sat 30 feet away, engine ticking as it cooled, exhaust still visible in the frigid air. 15 years. 15 years since the divorce, and I'd built my entire life around Ashley. Sold Green Industries, my life's work, and invested everything in her happiness. Her house, Howard's art supplies, their car payments, grocery money when things got tight. I'd driven through blizzards, canceled trips, ignored my own health, all because I thought family meant everything to her too. My phone buzzed, a text from Ashley. "Drive safe if you're coming, Dad. Weather looks rough." I stared at the screen, then at the warm windows where shadows moved behind drawn curtains. She'd sent this while laughing about hoping I wouldn't make it, while discussing my guilt trips and calling my homemade cookies awful. The gifts in my back seat suddenly felt like mockeries. Expensive scarves for Ashley, art books for Howard that cost more than most people's car payments. I'd agonized over every purchase, wanting to show them how much they meant to me. How much had I given them over the years? 200,000? 3? I'd stopped counting after Ashley's wedding, when I'd paid for everything because Howard's family couldn't contribute much. I'd been honored to do it. Honored to walk my daughter down the aisle, to provide for her new family. I reached for my car door handle, metal biting cold even through my gloves. The arthritis in my knees protested as I lowered myself into the driver's seat, but I barely noticed. Something had shifted inside my chest, something colder than the December air. Starting the engine, I backed out of their driveway, slowly, carefully. No spinning tires, no dramatic exits, just a quiet departure from a house where I'd never really been welcome. In my rearview mirror, the Christmas lights grew smaller, then disappeared entirely as I turned onto the main road. I wasn't heading home. Not yet. The highway stretched ahead, dark and empty except for scattered snowflakes dancing in my headlights. For the first time in 15 years, I had nowhere I needed to be, no one counting on me, no one hoping I'd stay away. The radio played, "I'll be home for Christmas," and I reached over to turn it off. The silence felt better. It felt like the beginning of something new. The windshield wipers swept back and forth, clearing snow that fell faster than they could handle. I took the long way home, avoiding the main highway, needing time to process what I'd heard. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Arthritis forgotten in the face of something much more painful. I hope he doesn't make it. Ashley's words echoed in my head with every turn of the wipers. Left, right, hope, doesn't make it? The rhythm became hypnotic, almost soothing as my mind began to work differently than it had in years. By the time I reached my neighborhood, the raw shock had settled into something colder. My house sat dark and quiet at the end of Maple Street. Christmas lights I'd strung along the gutters 2 weeks ago, twinkling weakly through the snow. The driveway needed clearing, but I left the car running while I stared at the place I'd called home for 20 years. Inside, the silence felt different than it had this morning. This morning it had been temporary, the quiet before joining family for Christmas. Now it felt permanent. Final. I hung my coat carefully in the closet, the wet wool heavy in my hands. The gifts for Ashley and Howard sat in bags by the door, expensive scarves and art books that suddenly seemed like monuments to my own foolishness. I stepped around them as if they might bite. My study welcomed me with familiar smells of leather and old paper. 20 years of business success lined these walls. Industry awards, photographs of groundbreakings, contracts that had made me wealthy enough to be generous. Too generous, apparently. The filing cabinet opened with a soft click. I pulled out folder after folder, spreading documents across my desk like a general planning a campaign. My will, dated last spring. Ashley Grain Wilson, primary beneficiary. My life insurance policy, $2 million. Ashley Green Wilson, sole beneficiary. Bank statements told their own story. September, $3,000 transfer to Ashley. Emergency car repair. October, $5,000. Roof leak. November, $2,500. Howard's art supplies. Every month for 3 years, sometimes more. Before that, the house down payment, $75,000. Before that, the wedding, $40,000. Before that, college, I each got $20,000. I pulled out my calculator and started adding. The numbers grew larger than I'd expected. Conservative estimate, $280,000 over 15 years, more than some people earned in a lifetime, handed over to a daughter who hoped I wouldn't show up for Christmas. The computer hummed to life, its blue glow illuminating bank statements and investment portfolios. Everything pointed the same direction, toward Ashley. Every safety net I'd built, every financial cushion, every inheritance plan. She was woven into my financial life like thread through fabric. A memory surfaced, sharp as winter air. Ashley at 22, crying in my kitchen after graduation. Dad, I don't know how I'll ever pay back student loans. My degree is useless. I'd handed her a check for the full amount the next day. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. That's what fathers are for. Another memory. Ashley at 28, Howard fidgeting beside her in my living room. Dad, we found this perfect house, but the down payment. I'd transferred the money before they finished asking. And another, Ashley last month, voice tight over the phone. Howard's having trouble finding buyers for his paintings. We're a little short this month. Another transfer. Another hope that this time they'd get on their feet. They never intended to get on their feet. Why would they when standing was so much effort? I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled, watching snow fall past my window. For the first time in years, my mind felt sharp in a way it hadn't since selling Green Industries. Strategic, calculating. This was a problem to be solved, not an emotion to be suffered. Ashley wanted me gone from Christmas. Maybe she wanted me gone permanently. The question was, how gone did she really want me to be? My lawyer's contact information glowed on the phone screen. Richard Morrison, estate planning specialist. We'd worked together for years, updating wills, managing trusts, ensuring Ashley's future security. Tomorrow was Christmas, but some conversations couldn't wait. I scrolled to his number and paused, thumb hovering over the call button. Once I made this call, there would be no going back to the man who'd driven through a blizzard with gifts in his back seat. that man was gone anyway. Christmas morning arrived with unusual quiet. No excited calls from Ashley, no hurried plans to coordinate gift exchanges. I sat with my coffee, documents from last night's review still scattered across my desk, and waited. The silence felt productive now, like the calm before a carefully planned storm. My phone rang at exactly 10:17 a.m. Ashley's name glowed on the screen, accompanied by her smiling photo from last year's Christmas dinner. The irony wasn't lost on me. I let it ring 3 times before answering, just long enough to sound tired. "Dad?" Her voice carried the perfect note of concern, but I could hear the rehearsed quality underneath. "We were so worried when you didn't show up last night. Are you okay?" I paused, letting her worry build. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have called sooner, but—" I lowered my voice, adding just the right tremor. "I had an accident." "What? Are you hurt?" The alarm in her voice sounded genuine, though I noticed she didn't ask if I needed her to come over. "Ice on Miller Road. You know that curve by the old church? My car slid right into the guardrail." I described it calmly, like someone still processing shock. "Nothing serious, but they wanted to keep me at the hospital overnight for observation." "Mild concussion," they said. "Oh my goodness." Ashley's exclamation felt theatrical. "Dad, why didn't you call us? We could have come to the hospital." "I didn't want to ruin your Christmas Eve. Besides, I was pretty out of it." I heard Howard's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. "The doctor said I was lucky. Could have been much worse." "Is Howard there?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Yes, he's right here. We're both so relieved you're okay." The speed of her response betrayed her eagerness to include Howard in the conversation, to share the burden of pretending to care. Howard's voice came through, probably on speakerphone now. "Ernest, man, that's terrible. Is your car totaled?" Interesting. His first question was about the car, not my well-being. "It's drivable, but there's some damage to the front end. I'll have to get it looked at after the holidays." "Well, the important thing is you're safe." Ashley jumped back in. "Are you sure you're okay? Do you need anything? We could bring you some food, or—" No, I'm fine. Just tired." I let my voice trail off slightly. "I think I just need to rest today. Maybe we can reschedule Christmas dinner for next week?" The pause that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds too long. "Of course, Dad. Whatever you need. Your health is the most important thing." "Howard and I were just saying how weird it felt without you here last night," she continued, but her tone had lightened considerably. "Relief," poorly disguised as continued concern, "but now we understand why. You should definitely rest." "I will. I'm sorry I worried you both." "Don't apologize. These things happen. Winter driving is so dangerous." Howard's voice carried that false heartiness people use when they're uncomfortable. "The main thing is you're okay." "We'll check on you in a few days," Ashley added. "Make sure you're feeling better." "And Dad? Please be more careful driving. We can't lose you." After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and smiled. For the first time in 24 hours, they had passed their test perfectly. The relief in their voices when I'd suggested postponing Christmas dinner was unmistakable. Howard's immediate concern about the car rather than my injuries, Ashley's quick acceptance of my story without pushing for details or offering to visit. Most telling of all was their eagerness to end the conversation once they'd established I was fine. No lingering questions about my condition, no insistence on coming over to check on me personally, just relief that their Christmas hadn't been disrupted, and I wasn't expecting them to actually care. I pulled out a notepad and wrote down their exact responses. The pauses, the tone changes, evidence of their true nature, though I hardly needed more proof. Still, it felt good to document their callousness in black ink. The beauty of my fabricated accident was its simplicity. Miller Road really was treacherous in winter. The old church was a familiar landmark, and everyone knew how dangerous ice could be. If they ever tried to verify my story, they'd find it perfectly plausible. More importantly, it established a pattern I could use later. I picked up my phone again and scrolled through my contacts until I found what I was looking for. Richard Morrison, my lawyer, had given me his personal number years ago for emergencies. This qualified. The week after New Year moved slowly, each day strengthening my resolve. I'd spent hours planning, researching, making lists of assets and legal requirements. Today, I would take the first real step toward showing Ashley exactly what her words on Christmas Eve were worth. Robert Mitchell's law office occupied the third floor of a restored Victorian building downtown. I'd been climbing these stairs for 15 years, usually for routine updates, to ensure Ashley's security. The irony wasn't lost on me as I pushed open the familiar mahogany door. "Ernest, good to see you." Robert stood from behind his desk, genuinely pleased. We'd worked together since my divorce, and he'd helped to structure every financial safety net I'd built for Ashley. "How are you feeling? Ashley mentioned you had an accident over the holidays." Of course she had, probably making sure everyone knew what a burden her injured father had become. "Much better, thank you. Still a bit shaken, but it gave me time to think about some important matters. Please sit." He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. "What can I help you with today?" I pulled out a folder I'd prepared, placing it carefully on his desk. "I need to modify my will. Specifically, I want to change the primary beneficiary." Robert's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's quite a significant change, Ernest. May I ask what's prompted this decision?" The accident made me reconsider my priorities. I kept my voice steady, measured. "I've been thinking about loyalty, about who truly deserves support." I paused, letting him process. "I want to designate the Great Lakes Animal Welfare Foundation as my primary beneficiary instead of Ashley." The silence stretched for several seconds. Robert leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, studying my face. "Ernest, this is a major decision. Have you discussed this with Ashley? She's been your primary concern for years." "No, and I don't intend to." My voice carried the same tone I'd used in boardrooms when deals were non-negotiable. "Animals don't lie to you, Robert. They don't hope you won't show up for important occasions. They appreciate care when it's given. I understand you're still processing the trauma from your accident, but this isn't about trauma." I leaned forward slightly. "This is about clarity. I've spent 15 years supporting someone who sees me as a burden. I'd rather my resources go to creatures who understand gratitude." Robert studied the legal pad in front of him, making notes. "Ernest, as your attorney, I have to ask, are you certain this reflects your true wishes? Major changes after traumatic events aren't uncommon, but they're not always permanent." I've never been more certain of anything. The conviction in my voice surprised even me. "I want this done today, with all proper documentation and witnesses." For the next hour, we worked through the technical details. Robert explained the requirements: witness signatures, notarization, specific language for the charitable designation. The Great Lakes Animal Welfare Foundation would receive my entire estate: the house, investments, retirement accounts, everything I'd planned to leave Ashley. "The foundation does excellent work," Robert admitted as he prepared the documents. "Their shelter programs and wildlife preservation efforts are highly regarded." He looked up at me. "Though I still think you should consider discussing this with your family." My family made their position clear. I signed each page deliberately, watching Robert's assistant witness the signatures. They'll understand my decision soon enough. As the final documents were notarized and sealed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete control over my own life. No more transfers to Ashley for emergencies. No more guilt about family obligations. No more pretending that blood relation guaranteed loyalty or love. "I'll file these with the court next week," Robert said, sliding the copies into a manila envelope. "Ernest, if you change your mind." "I won't." I stood, briefcase in hand. "Thank you for handling this so efficiently." Walking back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in months. The sealed documents in my briefcase represented more than legal changes. They were proof that I'd finally stopped being a victim of my own generosity. Ashley would continue receiving her monthly allowance, completely unaware that her future had just evaporated. The thought brought me more satisfaction than it should have, but I'd moved past caring about should and shouldn't. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Time to address those automatic transfers that Ashley took so completely for granted. The will was just the beginning. Now came the practical lessons and consequences. I spent the week after my lawyer visit reviewing every financial connection between Ashley and myself, mapping out 15 years of dependency that she'd taken completely for granted. Thursday morning, I drove to First National Bank with a folder of account documents. The same bank where I'd opened Ashley's college fund 20 years ago, where I'd co-signed her first checking account, where I'd arranged the automatic monthly transfers that had become her financial lifeline. "Good morning, Mr. Green." Janet, my personal banker, smiled warmly. "How can I help you today?" "I need to close the joint checking account with my daughter and cancel all automatic transfers." I placed the paperwork on her desk. "Also, I'd like to change the beneficiaries on my insurance policies." Janet's eyebrows rose slightly. "Of course, sir. May I ask if there's been any family situation that's prompted this?" "Just updating my affairs after some recent health concerns." The lie came easily now. "I want to ensure my assets go where they'll be most appreciated." Friday afternoon, while Ashley was probably planning her weekend shopping trip, the changes took effect. The monthly $3,000 transfer that hit her account every 10th, the transfer she'd relied on for rent, groceries, Howard's art supplies, simply wouldn't arrive this time. Saturday morning brought the first test. I was having coffee when I imagined Ashley at the grocery store, cart full of organic produce and expensive cuts of meat, sliding her card at checkout with the same confidence she'd had for years. The call came at 2:17 p.m. "Dad?" Ashley's voice carried confusion and embarrassment. "My card was declined at the store. There must be some mistake with the bank." I let her talk to my voicemail. "Hi, it's me again." "I called the bank, but they said the account is closed. That can't be right. Can you call me back? Howard's getting really frustrated, and we need to buy groceries." The third message arrived an hour later, Howard's voice in the background. "Tell him we can't pay rent next week if this isn't fixed." I turned my phone off and went to my study. From my window, I could see 3 houses down the street, where Christmas lights still twinkled. Families inside probably gathered around dinner tables, children complaining about homework, normal problems of normal people who didn't hope their parents wouldn't show up for holidays. By evening, Ashley had left 7 messages. The progression was fascinating. Confusion, then concern, then barely controlled panic, as the reality of their situation became clear. Howard's voice grew more prominent in the background with each call, his tone shifting from annoyance to accusation. "Ashley, this is your fault somehow. You must have said something to set him off. I told you to be more careful around him." Sunday brought 11 more calls. I listened to each voicemail with the same methodical attention I'd once given to quarterly reports. Ashley's voice grew thinner, more desperate. Howard had apparently stormed out Saturday night, returning drunk and angry, blaming her for ruining everything. "Dad, please, I don't understand what's happening. The bank won't tell me anything because of privacy rules. My insurance card isn't working either. Howard says you're punishing us for something, but I don't know what we did wrong." The irony was perfect. She genuinely didn't know what she'd done wrong. 2 weeks of hoping I wouldn't show up for Christmas, laughing about my guilt trips and homemade cookies, dismissing my sacrifices as unwanted attention. None of it registered as wrongdoing in her mind. Monday morning's message carried a new note of desperation. "Dad, I'm coming over. We need to talk about this face to face. I'll be there around noon." I looked at my phone, then at the calendar. Perfect timing. I had been patient long enough, methodical enough. Now it was time for the conversation that would complete Ashley's education about consequences. But first, I had one more call to make. Financial pressure was just the beginning. Now came the consequences for years of cutting corners. I'd watched Howard sell his paintings at weekend markets for 3 years, always cash only, always stuffing bills into his jacket pocket with that smug smile that said he was smarter than the system. Tuesday morning, I drove to the public library downtown. Their computers offered complete anonymity. No login required, no tracking cookies, just clean access to official websites. The IRS whistleblower office page loaded with bureaucratic efficiency, offering forms for reporting tax fraud and undeclared income. The anonymous tip submission was remarkably simple. Howard Wilson, 1247 Maple Street, unreported cash income from art sales at Detroit Farmers Market and Ferndale Art Fair. Estimated annual unreported income, $15,000, $20,000. I provided specific dates I'd seen him working the markets, always returning home with thick envelopes of cash that never appeared on any tax return. Wednesday brought the second phase. From the same computer, I updated Ashley and Howard's creditors about their changed financial circumstances. No longer supported by a family member. Recent loss of cosigner support. Updated risk assessment recommended. The language was clinical, professional, devastating. Thursday's mail delivery must have been educational. I drove past their house that evening, slowly, carefully, like any neighbor, and saw Howard's car in the driveway, Ashley's silhouette pacing past the living room window. The body language was unmistakable. Crisis mode activated. Friday morning brought the confirmation I'd been waiting for. Ashley's voicemail arrived at 7:23 a.m., her voice thin and strained. Dad, something terrible is happening. The IRS wants to audit Howard's taxes. They're asking about unreported income. How could they know about his art sales? And the credit card companies are demanding payment in full. Please call me back. We need help. Howard's voice rumbled in the background. Tell him this started right after he cut us off. That's not a coincidence. Their first spark of awareness. Excellent. The next voicemail, 3 hours later, carried a different tone. Dad, we drove to your house, but you didn't answer. Your car was there. Are you avoiding us? We need to talk about what's happening. Howard thinks. Howard thinks someone is targeting us specifically. Saturday's crisis escalated beautifully. Ashley left 4 messages throughout the day, each more desperate than the last. Howard had apparently spent Friday night calculating potential penalties and interest on unreported income. The numbers were sobering. $15,000 in unpaid taxes, plus penalties, plus interest, plus legal fees if prosecuted. Dad, Howard says we could owe $40,000. We don't have that kind of money. We don't have any money. The mortgage company wants updated financial statements. Our credit cards are frozen. How did everything go wrong so fast? By Sunday, paranoia had blossomed into full suspicion. Howard's voice dominated the latest message. Ernest, if you're listening to this, we know you're behind this somehow. Nobody else knew about my cash sales. Nobody else had access to our financial information. You're trying to destroy us. Ashley's voice interrupted. Howard, that's crazy. Dad wouldn't... But even she sounded uncertain now. The evolution was perfect. From confusion to panic, to suspicion, to the beginning of understanding. They still couldn't prove anything, still couldn't contact me directly, but they were starting to grasp the scope of their situation. Sunday evening brought my favorite message yet. Ashley's voice was steady now, past panic, into something colder. Dad, I don't know what we did to deserve this, but we get it now. You're punishing us. Howard's right. This isn't coincidence. We need to meet face to face and settle this. Whatever we did wrong, we'll fix it. But you can't just destroy our lives and not even tell us why. I saved that message, played it twice more. The shift from entitled victim to supplicant was exactly what I'd been working toward. Now they understood power dynamics, understood consequences, understood that their comfortable life had been entirely dependent on my goodwill. Monday morning would bring the next phase of their education. Financial ruin was just the foundation. Now came the lesson about how quickly a community can turn against you when the right information reaches the right people. I'd spent 15 years observing Ashley's social networks, her salon colleagues, the neighborhood book club, the weekend farmers market where Howard peddled his amateur paintings. Thursday morning found me back at the public library, creating email accounts with carefully chosen names. Patricia, concerned neighbor. Maple Street, resident.local business. Watch. Each profile required a different computer session, a different backstory, a different voice. The librarian probably thought I was researching genealogy. The first wave targeted Ashley's workplace, a concerned client, email to salon management. I'm worried about Ashley's personal situation affecting her work quality. She seems distracted lately, and there are rumors about financial troubles. Just thought you should know. Professional, caring, devastating. By Friday, the neighborhood phase began. Anonymous posts to the local Facebook group. Has anyone else noticed all the official mail going to the Wilson house? Hope they're not having the kind of problems that affect property values. The responses started within hours. Neighbors suddenly remembering unusual details, speculating about late-night arguments, noting how their car had been repossessed last month. Saturday brought the beauty salon consequences. Ashley called my voicemail at 2 p.m., her voice tight with confusion. Dad, something weird is happening at work. 3 clients canceled today, and Sarah asked if I was going through something. How does everyone know about our problems? We haven't told anyone anything. The neighborhood effects manifested Sunday. I drove past their house that evening and saw Ashley getting mail. Mrs. Henderson from next door, who chatted with Ashley for years, walked directly inside when she saw her approaching. The message was unmistakable. Pariah status activated. Monday's salon dynamics shifted dramatically. Ashley's manager pulled her aside. I knew because she left another voicemail. Dad, Linda wants to discuss my future with the salon. She says clients are expressing concerns about my personal situation affecting the business atmosphere. I don't understand how this happened so fast. Howard's anger reached new levels. His voice dominated Tuesday's message. This is coordinated, Ernest. Someone's spreading information about us systematically. Ashley lost 3 more clients today, and the farmer's market coordinator asked if I needed to take a break from selling. Who else knows about our tax problems? Wednesday brought the isolation Ashley had never experienced in her adult life. Dad, no one will talk to me. The grocery store cashier was cold. The mailman won't make eye contact, and someone posted on the neighborhood app about financially unstable residents. I haven't been to a community event in my life where I wasn't welcome. This isn't natural social dynamics. This is deliberate destruction. Thursday's breaking point arrived with surgical precision. Ashley's salon manager terminated her employment, officially for client retention concerns, but everyone understood the real reason. Her voicemail that evening was barely controlled. Dad, I lost my job. Linda said the salon's reputation was being affected by my personal circumstances. Howard's talking about leaving Detroit, maybe staying with his brother in Cleveland until this blows over. The beauty of social pressure was its apparent organic nature. Each person who avoided Ashley felt they were making an individual choice, based on reasonable concerns. The accumulation felt like natural community, response rather than orchestrated campaign. Even Ashley couldn't quite grasp how systematically she'd been isolated. Friday evening brought the message I'd been waiting for. Ashley's voice was hollow, defeated. Dad, I know you can hear these messages. Howard's packing his things. He says I'm toxic now, that being near me is destroying his reputation too. I have no income, no friends, no support system. Whatever lesson you're teaching, I'm learning it. Please call me back. But Howard's voice cut in, angry and desperate. Ernest, you win, okay? We get it. We're powerless without you. But this goes beyond punishment. This is systematic destruction of everything we've built. If you want to talk terms, we're ready to listen. Terms. Finally, they understood this was a negotiation, not a tantrum. Saturday morning would be perfect timing for our first direct conversation in a month. I watched their car pull into my driveway and felt only cold satisfaction. A month of careful planning had led to this moment. Through my living room window, I could see Ashley's face, pale, desperate, nothing like the confident woman who'd laughed about hoping I wouldn't show up for Christmas. They sat in the car for several minutes, arguing. Howard gesticulating angrily, Ashley staring at my house with something approaching horror. Finally, they got out and approached my front door with the grim determination of people who had nothing left to lose. I answered before they could knock. Dad. Ashley's voice cracked on the single word. Behind her, Howard looked older, defeated, like a man who'd discovered his easy life had hidden costs. Ashley, Howard. I stepped aside to let them in, noting how they moved. Ashley hesitant, Howard aggressive but uncertain. I wasn't expecting you. Weren't you? Howard's voice carried barely controlled fury. Everything started falling apart right after Christmas. Right after you supposedly had your accident. His eyes narrowed. Funny thing is, your car's been in the driveway every time we've driven by. I met his stare calmly. I've been recovering. Doctor's orders to rest. What doctor? Ashley's voice was thin, desperate. What hospital? We called everywhere Christmas Day trying to find you. Nobody had any record of Ernest Green being admitted. The moments stretched between us. I could have maintained the fiction, created more elaborate lies. Instead, I let the silence speak for itself. You were never in an accident, Ashley whispered. You've been here the whole time, haven't you? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Howard stepped forward, his artist's hands clenched into fists. You son of a... He caught himself, but barely. You've been watching us fall apart, enjoying it. I've been observing, I said carefully. That's different. Observing what? Ashley's voice rose. Our bank accounts being closed, my job being destroyed, Howard's tax problems, the whole neighborhood turning against us. You think that's all coincidence? Interesting theory. I settled into my favorite chair, forcing them to remain standing. The power dynamic was exactly where I wanted it. What makes you think any of that has anything to do with me? Ashley's eyes searched my face, looking for something. Guilt, anger, satisfaction. What she found there made her take a step backward. The timing, she said slowly. Everything started right after Christmas. Right after... Her voice trailed off as understanding began to dawn. Howard looked between us, sensing currents he couldn't quite grasp. Right after what? Ashley couldn't take her eyes off me. I saw the exact moment when the terrible possibility formed in her mind. The memory of Christmas Eve. The conversation she'd had with Howard about hoping I wouldn't show up. The cruel laughter about my guilt trips and homemade cookies. You were there, she whispered. Before you called us. You were already there. I remained perfectly still, letting her work it out for herself. What the hell are you talking about? Howard demanded. But Ashley wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at me with growing horror, understanding spreading across her face like a stain. You heard us talking? That's why you left. That's why everything started falling apart. The recognition in her eyes was everything I'd worked toward for a month. Not just understanding that her life had been systematically destroyed, but knowing why. Knowing that her own words, her own cruelty, had set everything in motion. You heard what we said about you, she continued, her voice barely audible. About hoping you wouldn't make it through the snow, about your guilt trips and your... She couldn't finish. Howard finally understood enough to be afraid. Ashley, what did you say? But I was still looking at my daughter, seeing her finally comprehend the full scope of her situation. She knew now that I had heard every word. She understood that everything that had happened since, the financial cutoff, the tax problems, the social isolation, her job loss, had been deliberate, calculated, personal. You destroyed our lives, she said. But there was no anger in it anymore, just defeated recognition. I still didn't speak. Sometimes silence carries more weight than any confession. Ashley's face went white as she stared into my eyes. You heard us, she whispered again, and I said nothing. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any words. I watched them scramble like insects in a jar, unaware that the lid had been sealed weeks ago. Their first move was predictably desperate, a consultation with a family lawyer about challenging my will. The irony was exquisite. They were plotting to contest a document that no longer existed in the form they imagined. Tuesday morning brought Ashley's first attempt at reconciliation. Her voice on my voicemail carried that fake cheerfulness desperate people use when pretending everything is fine. Hi, Dad. I was thinking we should talk. You know, clear the air between us. Family is so important, especially after everything we've been through. I didn't return the call. Wednesday's message escalated slightly. Dad, I know you're angry, but we can work through this. Howard and I have been doing a lot of thinking about our relationship with you. We want to make things right. The transparency was almost insulting. Every word calculated to sound caring, while obviously motivated by their financial desperation. I saved each message, documenting their descent into pathetic manipulation. Thursday brought Howard's voice, attempting authority he no longer possessed. Ernest, this silent treatment is childish. We're family, whether you like it or not. Ashley's your only daughter, and she deserves better than this. Call us back. By Friday, their lawyer had apparently explained the harsh realities of will contests. Ashley's message that evening carried the first notes of real panic. Dad, please, we just need to talk. I know we said some things that hurt you, but everyone says things they don't mean sometimes. Can't we move past this? Saturday brought multiple calls. Ashley arrived at my house twice, ringing the doorbell for 10 minutes each time while I watched from my upstairs window. Her body language told the story. Hunched shoulders, nervous pacing, the desperate energy of someone running out of options. Dad, I know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway. Please, just 5 minutes. We need to discuss our future as a family. Future? As if they had one. Sunday's voicemail revealed the depth of their situation. Dad, the lawyer says challenging a will costs thousands of dollars we don't have. But he also said that family reconciliation is always possible. We miss you. We miss having you in our lives. Monday brought Howard's frustrated return. Ernest, enough. You've made your point. You're angry. We get it. But this has gone far enough. Ashley's been crying for days, and frankly, we're both tired of this game. What do you want from us? What I wanted, they could never give back. The Christmas I'd driven through a blizzard to share. The years of believing their gratitude was genuine. The father-daughter relationship that had been the center of my life for 15 years. Tuesday's message was Ashley alone, her voice thin and breaking. Dad, please. Howard's talking about leaving Michigan entirely. Says there's nothing left for us here. I don't want to lose both of you. I know I messed up, but there has to be a way to fix this. The beauty of their desperation was how it stripped away all pretense. No more casual conversations about art supplies or grocery money. No more comfortable assumption that I'd always be there with my checkbook open. Just raw need, naked and embarrassing. Wednesday brought their most pathetic attempt yet. Ashley appeared at my door with Howard lurking behind her, both dressed in their most respectable clothes, trying to look like responsible adults worth reconciling with. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Dad? Ashley's smile was so forced it looked painful. We brought you something. She held up a small wrapped package. Probably something cheap from the drugstore. A token gesture to grease the wheels of reconciliation. I don't need anything from you, I said quietly. We know you're upset, Howard jumped in. But Ashley's your daughter. That has to count for something. I looked at Ashley, seeing not the confident woman who'd laughed about hoping I wouldn't show up for Christmas, but a desperate person clinging to the last relationship that might save her from complete ruin. You're right, I said finally. It does count for something. Their faces lit up with hope. It counts for exactly what it meant to you on Christmas Eve. And I closed the door. Homelessness would teach them what real dependence meant. I made one anonymous call to their landlord Tuesday morning, a simple conversation about late payments and creditworthiness. By Thursday, the eviction notice had arrived at their door. I watched Ashley through my kitchen window as she walked to the mailbox that morning. Her movements had changed over the past month. Less confident, more hunched, like someone who'd learned to expect bad news. When she opened that official envelope, I saw her face crumple from 50 yards away. The call came 2 hours later. Ashley's voice was barely recognizable. Thin, broken, desperate, in a way I'd never heard before. Dad, please, I know you're angry with us, but we got an eviction notice. 30 days to vacate. I'm begging you. Please help us. We have nowhere to go. I let the call go to voicemail. Her next message came that evening. Dad, I'm not asking for money anymore. I understand you're done with that, but could you just co-sign for a smaller apartment? Just until I can get back on my feet? I'll pay you back everything, I promise, every penny. The desperation was perfect. She was offering to repay money she'd never considered a debt before, treating my years of support like loans she'd somehow forgotten about. But even more telling was her complete ignorance of how thoroughly I destroyed her creditworthiness. No landlord would accept her application now, cosigner or not. Friday brought Howard's voice, aggressive but edged with panic. Ernest, this is getting ridiculous. Ashley's practically having a breakdown. We need a place to live. You want us to crawl? Fine, we're crawling. Help us find an apartment. Saturday's message revealed the full scope of their crisis. Dad, we looked at 12 places today. Every application was rejected. Our credit it's destroyed somehow. The only places that will take us are terrible. Really terrible. There's one studio apartment above a laundromat that smells like mold, but it's all we can afford, and even that's stretching our budget. Sunday brought the sound of boxes being packed in the background. Dad, we're moving tomorrow. Into that studio I mentioned. Howard's not taking this well. He keeps saying this is all my fault, that I brought some kind of curse on us. Please call me back. I need to hear your voice. Monday evening delivered the call I'd been anticipating. Ashley's voice was hollow, defeated. Dad, Howard left. He said he can't take living like this, that being around me was destroying his life too. He took his art supplies and drove to Cleveland to stay with his brother. Said he'd call when I figured out how to fix things. The beauty of Howard's abandonment was how perfectly it revealed his character. 3 years of living off my generosity, and the moment things got difficult, he fled. Ashley was learning what I'd known about him all along. He was a parasite, not a partner. Tuesday brought her most broken message yet. Dad, I'm alone now. Completely alone. I'm sitting in this awful little room with water stains on the ceiling and neighbors who scream at each other all night. I lost my job, my husband, my home, my friends. Everything I had is gone. I don't understand how everything fell apart so fast. The next day, Ashley appeared at my door again. She looked like she'd aged 5 years and 2 months. Thin, pale, wearing clothes that hung loose on her diminished frame. When I opened the door, she didn't even try to smile. Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. I waited. Are you ever going to forgive me? Because if the answer is no, I need to know. I can't keep hoping that someday you'll decide I've been punished enough. The question was more perceptive than I'd expected. She was finally beginning to understand that this wasn't a temporary tantrum, but a permanent change in our relationship. Forgiveness has to be earned, I said carefully. How? Her voice was barely a whisper. Tell me how, and I'll do it. I looked at her standing on my doorstep, homeless, abandoned, isolated, desperate, and felt no sympathy whatsoever. She still didn't understand that some words, once spoken, could never be taken back. Some laughter, once heard, changed everything forever. That's something you'll have to figure out yourself, I said, and closed the door. The next morning would bring her the lesson she'd never expected. When I saw Ashley walking up my driveway, broken and desperate, I knew the moment for my final lesson had arrived. She moved like someone who'd learned that hope was dangerous, her shoulders hunched against more than just the February cold. I opened the door before she could knock. She looked like she'd aged a decade in 2 months, hollow-eyed, thin, wearing the same jacket I'd seen her in 3 days ago. Howard's abandonment had left its mark in ways that went deeper than simple loneliness. Dad, her voice was barely a whisper. Please, I need to talk to you. I stepped aside and let her in. She stood in my entryway like a refugee, uncertain and grateful for even this small mercy. I know I don't deserve anything from you, she began, her words rushing together. I know I've been a terrible daughter, selfish, ungrateful, all the things you must think about me, but I'm begging you, please give me another chance. I led her to the living room, letting her settle into the same chair where she'd opened Christmas presents for years. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I've lost everything, she continued. Howard's gone, my job's gone, my friends won't talk to me. I'm living in this awful place that smells like mold and has bugs crawling out of the walls. But I know I brought this on myself somehow. I just don't understand how. The performance was heartbreaking, if you didn't know what I knew. She was trying so hard to be the daughter she thought I wanted, offering contrition and promises of change, still believing that family bonds could be repaired with enough sincerity. I want to be better, she said, tears starting to fall. I want to be the daughter you deserve. I know it might take time, but maybe we could start small. Maybe I could visit once a week, help with yard work or cooking. I just want us to be a family again. I watched her cry, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. She still didn't understand that some words, once spoken, poisoned everything that came after. Do you remember Christmas Eve? I asked quietly. Ashley wiped her eyes. Of course. You called to say you'd been in an accident. Before that, I said, do you remember what you and Howard were discussing before I called? Her face went pale. I could see the moment when memory began to surface, when she started to understand that this conversation was heading somewhere she didn't want to go. I don't remember exactly. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a file I'd labeled simply December 24th, and set it on the coffee table between us. Let me refresh your memory. I pressed play. Ashley's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. I honestly hope he doesn't make it. Her face went white as stone. Howard's voice followed. "Come on, that's your dad." I know. But look at this weather. Maybe the roads will be too bad. We could have one Christmas without him hovering, asking if we need money, bringing those awful sugar cookies." The laughter that followed was like acid in the air. I watched Ashley's expression crumble as she heard her own cruel amusement. Just us. No guilt trips about family togetherness. I let the recording play until Howard agreed. The old man does lay it on thick, always talking about his sacrifices, how he sold his business for you, like we asked him to. Then I stopped it. Ashley sat frozen, staring at the phone like it contained poison. You were there? You heard all of that? Every word," I confirmed. "I was standing outside your door with Christmas gifts, listening to my daughter laugh about hoping I wouldn't survive the drive to see her." "Dad, no, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. "I understood that night, and I've understood every day since. That conversation showed me exactly what our relationship meant to you, what I meant to you." Ashley was crying now, desperate sobs that shook her whole body. "Those were just words. People say things they don't mean when they're stressed. I was tired, and Howard was being difficult, and you revealed your true feelings about your father," I finished, "the man who sacrificed everything for you, who built his entire life around your happiness, who drove through a blizzard because he thought you wanted him there." She tried to speak, but I continued. "Everything that's happened since that night, your financial problems, the social isolation, the job loss, Howard leaving, all of it started because I finally understood what you really thought of me." "Please," she whispered. "Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But I wasn't finished with her education yet. Not quite. 6 months have passed since that last confrontation, and I have found something I never expected. Peace. The Great Lakes Animal Welfare Foundation has become not only the recipient of my inheritance, it has become my purpose. 3 mornings a week, I volunteered at their shelter, feeding dogs whose tails wagged with genuine excitement when they saw me approaching. The letter arrived on Tuesday, exactly 6 months after Ashley sat in my living room, listening to a recording of her own cruel words. I recognized her handwriting immediately, although it now looked more mature, more steady than the desperate scrawl I remembered from her previous attempts to contact me. I opened it standing in my kitchen, coffee growing cold on the counter. "Dear Dad," it began, "I don't expect you to respond to this letter. I'm not asking for anything. Not money, not forgiveness, not reconciliation. I just wanted you to know how this year has changed me. I work at a grocery store now, 40 hours a week on my feet, dealing with difficult customers and cleaning up spills. It's honest work, and for the first time in my life, I understand what you meant when you talked about earning something. Every paycheck feels different when you've worked for it instead of just receiving it. I live in a small apartment that I pay for myself. It's not much, but it's mine. Howard never came back from Cleveland, and honestly, I'm glad. I needed to learn who I am when I'm not depending on someone else's generosity. I know about the will, Dad. Robert Morrison told me when I tried to contest it last spring. He explained that you'd changed everything in January before any of this started. I understand now that even when I thought I had a safety net, I didn't. You were teaching me to fly without knowing it. I'm not the same person who laughed about hoping you wouldn't make it to Christmas. That woman feels like a stranger to me now. I know I can never take back those words or the years of taking your love for granted. I just wanted you to know that your lesson worked. I learned." The letter continued for another page, describing her small apartment, her co-workers, the satisfaction she'd found in simple accomplishments. She didn't ask for contact. She didn't suggest meeting for coffee or rebuilding our relationship. She simply wanted me to know that she'd grown into someone capable of supporting herself. I read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. I felt no urge to respond, no desire to reach out. The lesson had been taught and learned. That was enough. That afternoon, I drove to the shelter for my regular volunteer shift. The dogs knew my car by now, and I could hear their excited barking as I pulled into the parking lot. Inside, I went through the familiar routine, checking food bowls, refilling water, spending time with the animals who'd been there longest. A German Shepherd mix named Charlie had been at the shelter for 6 months, too old and scarred to attract adopters. He followed me from kennel to kennel, his graying muzzle nudging my hand whenever I stopped moving. When I sat down to rest, he laid his massive head across my lap with complete trust. "You're a good boy, Charlie," I said, scratching behind his ears. His tail thumped against the concrete floor with pure contentment. This was what love looked like when it wasn't bought or demanded. Charlie didn't care about my bank account or inheritance. He didn't calculate what I could do for him or weigh the benefits of our relationship. He simply appreciated kindness when it was offered. As I prepared to leave that evening, Charlie pressed against the kennel gate, watching me with those intelligent brown eyes. I'd started the paperwork to adopt him the week before. At 63, I was finally ready to share my home with someone who understood loyalty. Walking to my car, I thought about Ashley's letter one more time. She'd learned the value of work, the dignity of independence, the difference between earning and receiving. My methods had been harsh, but the lesson had taken hold. Sometimes people needed to lose everything to discover what they were truly capable of. I had no regrets about the choices I'd made that Christmas Eve, or any day since. Justice wasn't always gentle, but it was always fair. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching. I just wanted to cross the street after a perfect evening with my son, and suddenly an unknown passerby grabbed my arm. "Stop! It's a trap!" A truck sped by at 150 miles per hour, nearly hitting me. Shocked, I shouted, "Who are you? How did you know?" He whispered, "Don't you recognize me?" I looked closer and recognized him, and my world changed forever. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. "You're being selfish." Matthew's voice cut through my peaceful evening like a blade through silk. I slowly folded my newspaper, removed my reading glasses with deliberate precision. The crackling fireplace had been my only companion moments before, casting warm shadows across the Persian rug, where my son now paced like a caged animal. Selfish? I rose from my leather chair to my full height. At 68, I still commanded 6 feet, 2 inches of presence. Interesting choice of words. His Armani suit caught the firelight as he gestured with those manicured hands. Such a contrast to my work-scarred fingers. "Dad, you're 68 years old. Time to pass things to the younger generation." "Younger?" The word tasted bitter. "You mean irresponsible?" Matthew stopped pacing, his perfectly styled hair catching the glow from the street lamps visible through our Victorian windows. "I graduated Harvard. I have ideas to modernize the business." Harvard. As if that diploma hanging in his apartment meant anything when it came to understanding what I'd built. "Your degree doesn't teach you what 42 years of 16-hour days taught me." "Those days are over, Dad. We need fresh blood, new approaches." He stepped closer, and I caught the scent of his expensive cologne mixing with the wood smoke from our hearth. "You can't hold on to the reins forever." My shoulders squared, military bearing from my youth surfacing like muscle memory. "I can hold them as long as I choose. That's not fair to the company, or to me." His voice rose, desperation creeping in where confidence had been. "I've been working there for 15 years. "Working?" I moved closer, claiming my territory. "You've been learning. There's a difference." The family photos on the mantelpiece watched our confrontation, Elizabeth's smiling face among them, frozen in happier times when our son showed promise instead of entitlement. Matthew's eyes darted to them, then back to me. "I'm not some college intern anymore. I understand the business, the clients, the market trends you refuse to acknowledge." His voice cracked slightly. "With that attitude, you'll never see this company's true potential." Something cold settled in my chest. "With that attitude, you'll get this company only after my death." Silence stretched between us like a chasm. The grandfather clock's ticking seemed amplified in the sudden quiet. "The will—" Matthew's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "The will is made out to me, right?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I studied his face, my son's face, and saw something there that chilled me more than the October night pressing against our windows. "Yes," I said finally, "but not for much longer." I pointed toward the front door with the same firm gesture I'd used to direct construction crews for decades. Get out of my house! Matthew's face went pale. He took a step backward, then another. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to bring me coffee on construction sites. Then his expression hardened. You'll regret this decision, Dad. He strode through the hallway, his footsteps echoing off the hardwood floors. The front door slammed with enough force to rattle the windows, the sound reverberating through the house like a gunshot. I remained standing, listening to his BMW roar to life in the driveway. The engine noise grew louder, then faded as he sped away into the Boston night, leaving only the memory of burning rubber and the acrid smell of his anger. The silence felt heavier than Matthew's presence had. I stood frozen by the fireplace, shoulders still squared, as his car's engine note faded into the distant hum of Commonwealth Avenue traffic. Slowly, I let my military bearings slip away. My shoulders sagged as I walked to the whiskey cabinet, each step deliberate on the worn Persian rug. The Macallan 18 caught the firelight through its amber depths as I poured 2 fingers into a crystal tumbler. I held the glass but couldn't bring myself to drink. My hands, scarred from decades of construction work, trembled almost imperceptibly. The whiskey remained untouched as I set it on the mantelpiece and wiped my palms against my pants. Elizabeth's wedding photo smiled at me from its silver frame. He's become everything you warned me about, I whispered to her image. The fire had burned lower now, shadows stretching longer across the room. Outside, autumn evenings settled over Beacon Hill, streetlights creating pools of yellow on the sidewalk below. The grandfather clock's methodical ticking marked each second of my growing realization, ungrateful. The word echoed in my mind as I began pacing the same path Matthew had worn minutes earlier. After everything I'd sacrificed, every weekend I'd missed, every dinner that grew cold while I worked late to build something worth leaving behind, I stopped at the built-in bookshelves lined with business awards and industry recognition. 42 years of building Jenkins Builds from nothing into something substantial. From a 2-man operation renovating Dorchester triple-deckers to a 50-employee company handling million-dollar commercial projects, and my son saw me as an obstacle to be removed. The leather armchair creaked as I sank into it, covering my face with both hands. The smell of old books and furniture polish surrounded me, familiar sense of the home Elizabeth and I had made together, before cancer took her, before Matthew's entitlement poisoned what should have been a legacy of pride. Maybe I was too soft with him, I admitted to the empty room. Elizabeth had warned me about spoiling our only child, about giving him opportunities without requiring him to earn them. Private schools, Harvard tuition, a guaranteed position at the company, all handed over because I'd wanted him to have everything I'd lacked growing up in Southie. The whiskey still sat untouched on the mantelpiece. I stared at it, remembering Matthew's graduation day when I'd been so proud, so certain that my boy would take the company to heights I'd never imagined. That pride now felt foolish, naive. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, probably heading toward Mass General, life continuing while mine felt suspended between disappointment and resolve. The phone rang once from the kitchen, then stopped. Probably one of Matthew's friends, or maybe work calling about Monday's projects. Work, the one constant in my life since Elizabeth's death, the thing that gave meaning to my days. Jenkins Builds wasn't just a business. It was proof that a South Boston kid could build something lasting, something valuable. I pushed myself up from the chair with renewed purpose. Tomorrow I'd go to the office, think clearly without the emotional weight of this house and its memories. The company deserved better than to be handed over to someone who saw it merely as inheritance rather than achievement. Banking the fire carefully, I turned off the table lamps one by one. The house settled into darkness as I climbed the stairs, my shadow preceding me up the worn wooden steps. At the landing, I paused to look back at the living room, where my relationship with my son had fundamentally changed. Tomorrow would bring clarity. Tonight, I needed rest to process what I'd learned about the young man I'd raised. The parking lot stretched empty around my truck, a stark contrast to the usual weekday chaos of downtown Boston. I used my keycard at the converted factory building's entrance, listening to my footsteps echo in the marble lobby as the elevator carried me to the 12th floor. Jenkins Builds occupied the entire floor. modern loft space with harbor views that still amazed me after 12 years in this location. I flipped the light switches, watching fluorescence flicker to life over the reception area, where Liz kept fresh flowers and family photos of our 50 employees. Walking through the quiet office felt like touring a museum of my life's work. The project wall displayed photographs and blueprints of completed buildings, the Prudential Center renovation, 3 Back Bay office complexes, dozens of residential projects that had transformed neighborhoods. In the break room, I made coffee with the ritualistic precision of someone who'd been arriving early for decades. The machine gurgled and hissed, filling the silence with familiar sounds. Outside the windows, Boston Harbor stretched gray and choppy under October's overcast sky. My corner office welcomed me with its mahogany desk and leather chair, both gifts Elizabeth had insisted on when we'd moved here from our cramped Dorchester storefront. "A successful man needs to look successful," she'd said, overriding my protests about the expense. The newspaper lay folded beside my computer, but instead of reading it, I opened the desk's bottom drawer and found what I was looking for, a small-scale model of our first house, the Dorchester triple-decker that had launched everything in 1982. I remember standing in that gutted kitchen, plaster dust coating my hair, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Elizabeth had brought me coffee every morning that first brutal winter, her faith in my vision stronger than my own doubt. 1992, I said aloud, turning the model in my hands. Started with renovating one old house that nobody else wanted to touch. The memories flowed like harbor tide, rejected loan applications, working weekends, sleeping in the van to save money on hotels when projects ran late. Elizabeth bringing lunch to job sites, picking splinters from my hands, believing in something I couldn't yet see clearly myself. Our first major contract, a Back Bay office building renovation, had felt like winning the lottery. 5 years of struggle suddenly validated by one handshake with a satisfied client who'd recommended us to others. Elizabeth's final words echoed across the quiet office. "Don't let anyone diminish what you've built, Morris. This company is proof that dreams backed by work become legacy." Matthew had never understood that distinction. Dreams without work remained fantasies, while work without vision produced nothing worth inheriting. My son possessed neither the vision to see what the company could become, nor the work ethic to deserve guiding it there. Through my window, weekend sailors navigated the harbor in small boats, their white sails catching morning light. Freedom earned through understanding wind and water, not granted through birthright. The scale model felt solid in my hands, wood and glue and careful craftsmanship, just like the real buildings we'd constructed. Tangible proof that ideas could become reality through persistence and skill. Jenkins Builds employed 50 people who depended on careful leadership, not reckless ambition. Clients trusted us because we'd earned that trust project by project, never cutting corners or making promises we couldn't keep. That reputation couldn't be handed over to someone who viewed inheritance as entitlement. My coffee had grown cold while I'd been lost in memories. I drained the cup anyway, tasting the bitter dregs as I set the model house prominently on my desk, where I'd see it every day. Standing at the harbor window, I felt the calm that comes from understanding difficult truths. The company would survive this family crisis because it was built on something stronger than blood relationships. It was built on value created through effort. The phone started ringing in reception, probably Monday's business beginning early. I didn't answer, but the sound reminded me that Jenkins Builds would continue, regardless of family drama. My resolve crystallized like harbor ice in winter, complete, unbreakable, necessary. 3 days had passed since my Saturday morning clarity. Monday's office routine had felt different somehow, productive but tinged with melancholy. Now, sitting at my kitchen table with late lunch and quarterly reports spread before me, I found my thoughts drifting toward the silence from Matthew. The rotary phone in my study began its insistent ringing, cutting through the afternoon quiet like an alarm. I glanced up from the financial projections, counting each ring while debating whether to answer. Most business calls came to my cell phone these days. 4 rings, 5, 6. I pushed back from the table and walked slowly toward the study, my hand hovering over the black receiver. On the seventh ring, I lifted it to my ear. "Hello?" "Dad, it's me." Matthew's voice carried a tone I hadn't heard in years, uncertain, almost humble. "Listen, I wanted to apologize for Friday night." Matthew calling me? I straightened in my chair, afternoon light streaming through the study windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like my suddenly racing thoughts. "I thought you wouldn't call," I admitted, my voice more cautious than I had intended. "I was wrong to demand things from you." His words came slowly, carefully chosen. "You built that company from nothing. I had no right to act entitled to it." The family photos on my desk seemed to watch our conversation. Elizabeth's smile, Matthew's graduation picture, happier times when we understood each other. Something loosened in my chest, a knot I'd carried for 3 days. "Well," we both said things we didn't mean that night. "Dad, tomorrow the Red Sox play the Yankees. Their last game of the season." His voice gained energy, excitement creeping in. "Want to go? Like old times? I know how much you love beating New York." Baseball. When was the last time Matthew had initiated family time? The question caught me completely off guard, hope rising despite my better judgment. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious. Meet me at the main entrance around 6:30 tomorrow evening. I'll get us good seats. Make it a proper father-son night." I found myself smiling for the first time since Friday. "Of course I agree. That's a wonderful idea, son." The last time we'd attended Fenway together was 2019, before the pandemic changed everything, when he still seemed to enjoy my company rather than enduring it. Those games had been our tradition once, something Elizabeth encouraged, saying men needed their bonding rituals. "Great. I'll text you if anything changes, but plan on 6:30 at the main gate." After hanging up, I remained standing in the study, my reflection caught in the darkening window glass. Maybe Elizabeth had been right about patience winning him back eventually. Perhaps he just needed time to mature, to understand that family meant more than business succession plans. The Red Sox memorabilia on my bookshelf seemed to glow in the fading afternoon light. Signed baseballs, vintage programs, a photo of Ted Williams I'd treasured since childhood. Tomorrow night, Matthew and I would sit together again, rooting for our team like we used to when he was young and thought I knew everything about the world. I walked toward the bedroom to consider what to wear tomorrow, feeling lighter than I had in months. The workday had ended 2 hours earlier than usual. I'd left the office at 4, telling Liz about my evening plans with Matthew. Her face had lit up immediately. "Morris, that's wonderful. You two haven't gone to a game together in years." Now, climbing the front steps of my brownstone with extra energy in each stride, I felt anticipation building like pressure in a steam engine. October evening air carried the crisp promise of autumn in Boston. Perfect baseball weather. In my bedroom, I opened the closet door and searched through my casual clothes. There, hanging behind dress shirts, was my faded Red Sox jersey from the 1990s. The fabric felt soft, from decades of washing, memories woven into every thread. This jersey had witnessed Matthew's first game at age 12. I could still picture him in miniature Red Sox gear, eyes wide with wonder as we walked through the tunnel into Fenway's green cathedral. He'd eaten 5 hot dogs that day and felt sick during the 7th inning, but refused to leave early. My old baseball cap sat on the closet shelf, dusty but treasured. Elizabeth had bought it for me in 1995, insisting that every Red Sox fan needed proper headwear. The brim was curved exactly how I liked it, shaped by years of shielding my eyes from stadium lights. Weather forecast on my phone showed clear skies, temperature dropping to 58 degrees. Perfect for October baseball. I selected a light jacket, warm enough for evening air, not too heavy for stadium seats. The decision came suddenly. I would walk to Fenway Park. Standing at my bedroom window, I calculated the distance from Beacon Hill to Kenmore Square. 20 minutes at most, through neighborhoods I'd known since childhood. The evening was too beautiful to waste sitting in traffic, and walking would give me time to savor this unexpected gift of reconciliation. I called Liz at the office to inform her I might arrive late tomorrow morning, depending on how late the game ran. "Enjoy every minute," she said warmly. "You deserve this happiness." Deserve. The word echoed as I prepared to leave. Did I deserve Matthew's change of heart? Perhaps patience really was a virtue, as Elizabeth always claimed. Maybe my son had simply needed time to recognize what truly mattered in life. At 5:45, I stepped onto Beacon Hill's historic sidewalks. Gaslit street lamps were flickering to life early, casting warm pools of light on brick walkways, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Children played in nearby Louisburg Square, while dinner smells drifted from brownstone windows. The walk would take me past Boston Common, through downtown's bustle, then along Boylston Street to Kenmore. Each step carried me toward what felt like a new beginning with my son. Elizabeth would have smiled seeing me in my old Red Sox jersey, walking to meet Matthew for a game. Baseball brings men together, she used to say. Something about sitting side by side, cheering for the same team. At the corner of Charles and Beacon, I paused to look back at my home one last time before disappearing into the downtown crowd. The brownstone's windows glowed golden in the dying light, solid and permanent against the changing sky. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. Tonight belonged to fathers and sons and America's greatest game. The Green Monster towered above Lansdowne Street as I approached Fenway's main entrance. Crowds of fans streamed toward the gates, a sea of red and navy mixing with occasional Yankees jerseys, worn by brave souls venturing into enemy territory. I spotted Matthew near the ticket windows, waving enthusiastically. He wore khakis and a pressed Red Sox polo shirt. More formal than my vintage jersey, but genuine enthusiasm seemed to radiate from his face as he approached with open arms. Our embrace felt natural for the first time in years. His hug lingered an extra moment, and I caught myself fighting back unexpected tears. "Dad, you look great. That old jersey brings back memories. Your mother bought this for me the year you started Little League." I adjusted the cap's brim, suddenly self-conscious. Figured it was appropriate for tonight. Matthew pulled expensive tickets from his pocket with a flourish. "Section 18, right behind home plate. Best seats I could find." The price of those tickets must have been considerable, far more than Matthew usually spent on anything. His generosity surprised and touched me as we passed through security and entered Fenway's concourse. "Remember when we used to sit in the bleachers?" I asked, gesturing toward the cheaper seats. "Of course, but tonight deserves better than bleachers. This is special." Our seats exceeded every expectation. VIP section with cushioned chairs, cup holders, protection from wind. Matthew had clearly spent significant money to make this evening memorable. The gesture spoke louder than any apology could have. "Matthew, these seats must have cost a fortune." "Worth every penny to see you smile like this," he replied, signaling a vendor for hot dogs and beer. As the teams took the field for warm-ups, we settled into comfortable conversation. Matthew asked about specific players, remembered statistics I'd taught him years ago, laughed at my observations about Yankees' overpaid roster. "Dad, remember when we came here and I was 12? You explained why Fenway was special. The Green Monster, the triangle in center field, Pesky's pole. You ate 5 hot dogs that night and got sick. Tonight, I'll limit myself to 2. Matthew laughed, and the sound transported me back 26 years to when he was small enough to hold my hand walking through these same concourses. The first pitch arrived at 7:07 p.m., and we rose with 40,000 other fans to cheer. Yankees took an early lead, but Matthew didn't seem discouraged. He cheered every Red Sox at-bat, analyzed pitching changes, bought me another beer during the 3rd inning. By the 5th inning, Boston had rallied to take the lead, 7-4. Matthew and I stood together, high-fiving after each hit, our voices hoarse from cheering. For 3 magical hours, we weren't CEO and demanding son. We were just father and child sharing something timeless. During the 7th inning stretch, we sang Sweet Caroline, with the entire stadium, Matthew's arm around my shoulders as we swayed to the music. In that moment, surrounded by thousands of voices raised in celebration, I felt complete happiness for the first time since Elizabeth's death. "Thank you for calling yesterday," I told him as the final out was recorded. "This was exactly what I needed." Matthew smiled, but something flickered across his face too quickly for me to interpret. "We should head out before the crowd gets too thick," he suggested as fans began streaming toward exits. We stood near our seats, gathering jackets while the stadium slowly emptied around us. The field lights remained bright. Grounds crew already preparing for winter storage. Dad, why don't we leave separately? I parked on the other side of Kenmore. You probably want to head straight back to Beacon Hill. The suggestion seemed practical enough. All right, son. Thank you again for tonight. It meant everything to me. Our final embrace lingered as thousands of fans moved past us toward Yawkey Way. The crowd carried us along Yawkey Way like a river of celebrating Red Sox fans. Car horns honked victory songs throughout the Fenway neighborhood, while vendors called out final offers on team merchandise and programs. What a game, I called out over the noise, my voice hoarse from 3 hours of cheering. 7-4 against the Yankees. Doesn't get much better than that. Matthew walked beside me, occasionally glancing at his watch. Dad, I'm parked in the expensive lot near the corner. You sure you don't want to ride home? The October night air felt crisp and invigorating after the warm stadium atmosphere. Stars were actually visible above Boston's city lights, a rare treat for urban dwellers like ourselves. No thanks, son. The weather's perfect for walking, and I want to think about tonight while the feeling lasts. I stretched my arms, feeling more energetic than I had in months. Besides, it's only 20 minutes to Beacon Hill. We reached his BMW, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than many people's annual salaries. The expensive parking spot near Lansdowne Street had likely cost $50, another gesture showing how much tonight meant to him. Be careful on the roads, Dad. Matthew's voice carried an edge of concern I found touching. Traffic can be crazy after big games like this. Don't worry, I'm not some helpless old man. I've been walking these streets for 40 years. I know, just humor your son's concern, all right? He pulled me into another embrace, this one lasting longer than our greeting had. I felt his arms tighten around my shoulders, almost desperately, as if he were memorizing the moment. Thank you for making the first move toward fixing things between us, I whispered into his ear. Your mother would be so happy to see us like this. When we separated, Matthew's eyes seemed unusually bright in the parking lot's harsh fluorescent lighting. He fumbled with his car keys for a moment before unlocking the BMW's door. Drive safely, I called as he slid behind the wheel. Text me when you get home so I know you made it okay. Will do, Dad. You too. Straight home. No detours. The engine purred to life with Germanic precision, and I watched his taillights disappear into the stream of post-game traffic flowing toward downtown Boston. For several moments, I stood in the parking lot, savoring the evening's unexpected magic. Finally, I began walking toward Lansdowne Street, breathing deeply of autumn air that carried hints of winter approaching. The familiar route home would take me past Boston University's campus, through residential neighborhoods I'd known since childhood, finally arriving at Beacon Hill's gaslit streets. 20 minutes of peaceful walking ahead. Time to process this wonderful turn in my relationship with Matthew. Elizabeth's voice seemed to whisper in the cool breeze. Patience always wins in the end, Morris. At the corner of Lansdowne and Brookline Avenue, I paused to look back once more at Fenway Park's lights. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, but tonight belonged to fathers and sons and second chances. I turned the corner, disappearing from view of anyone who might have been watching from the parking area behind me. The walk through Boston's Fenway neighborhood had been everything I'd hoped for. Quiet streets lined with brownstones, the distant sound of celebrating fans gradually fading behind me, autumn leaves rustling under streetlights that cast everything in warm golden pools. I reached the intersection of Lansdowne and Brookline Avenue, feeling completely at peace with the world. The traffic light glowed red in the crisp October air, and I stopped at the crosswalk like any responsible pedestrian, my mind still replaying moments from tonight's magical reconciliation with Matthew. The signal changed to green, walk symbol illuminated. I stepped forward into the crosswalk, my old Red Sox jersey visible under the street lighting, completely unaware that death was racing toward this exact spot at 80 miles per hour. A hand grabbed my arm with shocking force, yanking me backward just as I'd taken my first step into the intersection. Stop! It's a trap! The massive truck roared past exactly where I would have been standing, its engine noise deafening, headlights blazing, air displacement from its passage strong enough to pull at my jacket like invisible hands. The ground actually vibrated under my feet from the vehicle's weight and speed. I stumbled backward into the stranger who'd grabbed me, both of us nearly falling from the force of my sudden reversal. The truck disappeared around the corner with screeching tires, leaving behind the acrid smell of burned rubber and diesel exhaust. "What the—" I gasped, my heart hammering against my ribs as the reality of what had just happened crashed over me like ice water. The man who'd saved my life steadied me with both hands, his grip firm and reassuring. He wore glasses and a navy peacoat, medium height, probably Matthew's age, with an expression of urgent determination mixed with guilt. "Are you hurt?" he asked, studying my face in the streetlight's glow. I'm alive." My voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "That truck would have killed me if you hadn't grabbed my arm." The intersection fell eerily quiet after the thunderous passage of the vehicle. No other cars approached from either direction, as if the universe had arranged this moment of near death with theatrical precision. "You need to sit down," the stranger said, guiding me toward a bench near the bus stop. "You're in shock." My legs felt unsteady as we walked the few steps to the bench. The familiar weight of my Red Sox cap, the jersey Elizabeth had loved, the comfortable shoes I'd chosen for tonight's walk. All of it felt surreal now, props in a play where someone had just tried to murder me. "How did you know?" I managed to ask as I sat heavily on the cold metal bench. "How did you know to be here, to grab me at exactly the right moment?" The stranger sat beside me, removing his glasses to clean them with trembling fingers. When he looked at me again, I saw something in his expression that made my blood run even colder than the October night air. "Mr. Jenkins," he said quietly, "we need to talk." I stared at the man who'd just saved my life, my mind working through shock and confusion to place his familiar face. The streetlight cast harsh shadows across his features, but something about his eyes, the shape of his jaw, tugged at my memory. "Don't I recognize you from somewhere?" I asked, my voice still shaky from the near-death experience. "I'm Grover Hayes," he said quietly, replacing his glasses with deliberate precision. "Matthew's friend from Harvard. We've met a few times at company parties." The name clicked into place immediately. "Grover—" "Yes, of course." "The lawyer. You came to our 4th of July barbecue 3 years ago." My confusion deepened. "But how did you— Why were you here at this exact moment?" He looked down at his hands, guilt written across his features like a confession. "Matthew told me about his plan. He hired someone to hit you with that truck." The words hit me harder than the vehicle would have. "That's impossible," I whispered, my voice breaking. "We just made peace tonight. We went to the game together. We laughed. That was part of the plan, Mr. Jenkins." Grover's voice carried the weight of terrible knowledge. He wanted you relaxed and trusting. The baseball game, the reconciliation, all of it was calculated to make you an easier target. I felt the world tilt sideways, reality reshaping itself into something unrecognizable. The baseball game, the expensive seats, his apology, all fake? I'm afraid so. He owes $50,000 to some very dangerous people. The only way he could pay them was— Grover's voice trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "By inheriting my company after my death." The simple statement hung in the night air like a death sentence delivered in reverse. My son, the boy I'd taught to throw a baseball, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose Harvard graduation had filled me with such pride, had spent this evening planning my murder while pretending to love me. "He hired a professional driver," Grover continued, each word cutting deeper. $50,000 for what would look like a tragic accident, a businessman struck down while walking home from a wonderful evening with his son. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. The Red Sox jersey that had felt so meaningful an hour ago now seemed like a costume in some grotesque performance. Every smile Matthew had shown me tonight, every laugh we'd shared, every moment I'd treasured as evidence of our healing relationship, all lies. "Why didn't you warn me sooner?" I asked, though my voice came out flat, emotionally exhausted. "I should have. I wrestled with it all day, torn between loyalty to an old friend and—" He gestured helplessly. "I couldn't let you die for his debts. I couldn't live with that on my conscience." The bench felt cold beneath me, autumn air cutting through my jacket as if my body had forgotten how to generate warmth. Somewhere in the distance, normal Boston nightlife continued. Late diners, couples walking home, The ordinary rhythm of a city, unaware that a father had just discovered his son's ultimate betrayal. $50,000? I repeated numbly. That's what my life was worth to him. Grover shifted uncomfortably beside me. Mr. Jenkins, I know this is devastating, but you need to decide what you're going to do now. Matthew doesn't know I intervened. As far as he knows, his plan failed, due to some accident of timing. I sat in silence, processing the complete destruction of everything I'd believed about my relationship with my son. The company I'd built, the legacy I'd planned to leave him, the love I'd never questioned despite our recent conflicts. All of it reduced to a financial transaction in Matthew's mind. Something cold and hard began forming in my chest, replacing the shock and grief. My son had tried to have me killed for money. Now I needed to decide what a father does with that knowledge. I accepted the cigarette Grover offered with trembling fingers, though I hadn't smoked in 20 years. The flame from his lighter illuminated both our faces in the darkness, creating the small circle of conspiracy under the streetlight. Tell me everything, I said, my voice steadier, now that the initial shock had passed. I need to understand exactly what my son planned. Grover exhaled smoke into the October air, organizing his thoughts. He approached me last Tuesday, said he had a business opportunity that required discretion. A business opportunity? The bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. My murder was a business opportunity. The debt collectors were pressuring him. Sarah had been pushing about the mortgage, the kids' private school tuition. Everything was spiraling out of control financially. Grover's voice carried the weight of confession. He thought I'd help him financially, maybe co-sign a loan. Instead, he asked you to help him commit murder. Not directly at first. He talked about accidents, about how convenient it would be if certain problems just disappeared. Grover dropped his cigarette, grinding it under his heel. When he finally spelled it out, I was horrified. Police sirens wailed in the distance, multiple vehicles responding to some emergency across the city. The sound made us both tense, though we'd done nothing wrong, technically. The driver he hired, I said, forcing myself to focus on details rather than emotion. Who is he? A professional. Stages accidents for insurance fraud, usually. Matthew found him through some unsavory connections from his gambling days. Grover's glasses reflected the streetlight as he turned toward me. $50,000 for a clean hit and run. No witnesses, no evidence, just a tragic accident. Every detail felt like another nail in the coffin of my relationship with my son. How long has he been planning this? 2 weeks, maybe 3. The baseball game was his stroke of genius. Get you emotional and nostalgic, make you want to walk home alone, then coordinate the timing perfectly. I thought about Matthew's performance tonight. Every calculated smile, every manufactured moment of bonding, every manipulation of my paternal love. The expensive seats hadn't been generosity. They'd been an investment in making me a better target. Sarah knows? About the debt, yes. About the murder plot, I don't think so. She's been pressuring him to find money somehow, but I believe she thought he'd get a legitimate loan or business deal. The absurdity struck me suddenly. My daughter-in-law unknowingly pressuring her husband to commit patricide over private school tuition and mortgage payments. The American dream twisted into something monstrous. What made you decide to intervene tonight? I asked. Grover removed his glasses, cleaning them with shaking hands. This afternoon I realized I couldn't live with myself if I let it happen. Whatever loyalty I felt to Matthew, it didn't extend to watching an innocent man die. Even knowing you'd be destroying your friendship with him? A friendship with someone who'd murder his own father isn't worth preserving. We sat in silence, processing the magnitude of Matthew's betrayal. Around us, Boston's night sounds continued. Distant traffic, late-night conversations from passing pedestrians, the hum of a city that had no idea a son had tried to murder his father for inheritance money. He'll be waiting for news, I said finally, probably checking obituaries, news reports, waiting for confirmation that I'm dead. What are you going to do? I stood up from the bench, feeling something shift inside me, not just emotionally, but almost physically. The Morris Jenkins who'd been a loving, trusting father was gone forever. In his place stood someone harder, colder, more calculating. I'm going to make sure he gets exactly what he deserves, I said. Nothing. I arrived at Grover's office dressed in my best business suit, carrying a leather briefcase containing documents I'd spent the sleepless night organizing. The Cambridge location felt appropriate, near Harvard, where Matthew and Grover had first met, where my son had learned the arrogance that eventually led him to plan my murder. "Morris, come in." Grover closed his office door behind me, gesturing toward the chairs arranged around his desk. "Coffee?" "Black, thank you." I set my briefcase on the polished wood surface, noting how Grover's diplomas and ethical guidelines were prominently displayed on the walls. I've had time to think about what I want to do. The office smelled of leather-bound law books and fresh coffee, a professional sanctuary where we could conduct the legal destruction of my son's future without emotion or sentiment clouding our judgment. "I want to completely disinherit him from everything," I said, opening my briefcase to reveal current will documents, company and corporation papers, and financial statements. The company, the house, investments, he gets nothing. Grover nodded, already prepared. "I have the necessary forms ready. What would you like to do with the assets instead?" "A charitable foundation, the Jenkins Community Foundation for Housing." The idea had crystallized during my sleepless night, Elizabeth's voice seeming to guide my thoughts. "The company will continue operating, but all profits will fund affordable housing for working families." "That's actually brilliant," Grover said, reviewing the documents I'd brought. "It serves the community while ensuring Matthew receives exactly what he's earned. Nothing." We spent the next hour methodically dismantling Matthew's inheritance expectations. Every asset he'd assumed would be his. Every dollar he'd counted on inheriting, redirected toward helping families who actually contributed to society, rather than plotting murder for financial gain. "The foundation structure prevents him from contesting the will," Grover explained as we reviewed legal language. "Charitable bequests are heavily protected under Massachusetts law." "Good. I want this bulletproof." I signed each document with the same precision I'd used for 42 years of business contracts. "How quickly can we make this legally binding?" "With notarization immediately. I'll arrange witnesses for Friday afternoon." Grover stamped several copies with his official seal. "The bank will have the original. You'll keep copies, and I'll maintain another set in my files." Looking out his office window toward Harvard Square, I felt a strange sense of completion. The same institution where Matthew had learned to feel entitled to things he hadn't earned would now be within walking distance of the legal documents that stripped away every cent of that entitlement. "About our conversation last night," I said as we prepared final copies. "Client confidentiality covers everything?" "Absolutely. What Matthew told me, what happened on the street, your decision today, all protected." Grover's expression was serious but relieved. "You're choosing justice over vengeance, Morris. Elizabeth would be proud." The mention of my wife's name hit precisely the right note. She would indeed approve of using the company to help families, rather than rewarding the son who'd tried to murder me for money. "Let him wait for inheritance that will never come," I said, placing signed documents back in my briefcase. "While he's expecting riches, the foundation will be building homes for people who actually deserve them." We shook hands across his desk, not just lawyer and client, but two men who'd chosen to do the right thing, despite the personal cost. Grover was losing a lifelong friend. I was losing a son. But sometimes justice requires sacrifices from the innocent as well as punishment for the guilty. The notary office occupied a corner building in Boston's historic North End, surrounded by the kind of authentic Italian-American community that had built this city through honest work rather than inherited wealth. I walked through the door carrying finalized foundation documents, feeling the weight of justice in my leather briefcase. "Mr. Jenkins? Right on time." The notary, a third-generation professional whose family had been witnessing important documents in this neighborhood for 60 years, gestured me toward his desk. "I understand we have quite a few papers to make official today." I arranged the documents methodically. New will completely disinheriting Matthew, charitable foundation and corporation papers, company asset transfer documents, personal property bequests to educational charities. Each paper represented another nail in the coffin of my son's inheritance expectations. "Identity verification first," the notary said, examining my driver's license and social security card with professional thoroughness. Then we'll need 2 independent witnesses for the will changes. The witnesses arrived precisely at 3:15, a retired teacher and a small business owner, both chosen by Grover for their unimpeachable reputations and complete lack of connection to my family. They studied the documents carefully before adding their signatures to each page. "The Jenkins Community Foundation for Housing," the retired teacher read aloud. "What a wonderful legacy, Mr. Jenkins." "The company will serve its true purpose," I replied, signing my name with the same steady hand that had built Jenkins Builds from nothing, building homes instead of destroying families. The notary applied his official seal to each document with ceremonial precision, the metallic stamp making permanent what my son's betrayal had made inevitable. Each impression created legal reality from my nighttime planning. "Your son isn't mentioned anywhere in the new will," the notary observed professionally. "That's unusual for family businesses." "He's made his choices. This reflects the consequences of those choices." Standing in that small office, surrounded by the tools of legitimate legal process, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Elizabeth's death: complete peace with my decisions. Matthew had wanted my death to make him rich. Instead, my continued life would make deserving families rich. The company he'd tried to inherit through patricide would now fund affordable housing for working families. The personal assets he'd counted on would support education for young people who understood that success required effort, not murder. "All documents are properly executed and legally binding," the notary announced, handing me official copies. "The foundation will receive everything according to your specifications." I placed the papers in my briefcase with the satisfaction of a man who'd outmaneuvered an enemy without compromising his principles. Elizabeth's voice seemed to whisper approval. She'd always believed in helping others rather than indulging family dysfunction. Outside the notary office, I paused to light a cigar in the late afternoon sunshine. Harbor air carried the salt smell of Boston's waterfront, mixing with smoke from the Cuban tobacco Elizabeth had occasionally allowed me to enjoy. Walking toward the harbor, I reflected on the elegant completeness of the justice I'd arranged. Matthew's motive for murder had been eliminated retroactively. The inheritance that drove him to hire an assassin no longer existed. The money he'd wanted would instead help families who actually needed homes. At the harbor railing, I looked out over Boston Harbor, toward the horizon where Elizabeth and I had once planned to sail together. The foundation would be her memorial as much as mine, transforming what could have been a story of family destruction into a legacy of community construction. Behind me, traffic moved through the North End's narrow streets, ordinary people going about their honest business. None of them knew that justice had just been quietly served in a small notary office, or that a son's attempt at patricide had been transformed into a father's gift to the community. The briefcase in my hand contained more than legal documents. It held the proof that sometimes the best revenge is ensuring that goodness triumphs over evil through entirely legitimate means. I finished my cigar and walked home, completely satisfied with the way moral mathematics had balanced the equation of my son's betrayal. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.